Chapter 4. The long chase begins. Later that evening, Franklin and Lyra were in their living room staring at the far wall, which was the only one in the room without a family photo or a hanging plant or a Verulian statue of some historical significance Franklin wasn't aware of. He was staring because he was thinking about Helena. He wondered where she came from and what could have triggered the onset of 6 multiple personalities and total amnesia. Lyra was looking at the wall because it was a popular game in Verulia called Veritsu. He had never understood it, and she had never been able to explain it to him, other than to say that concentration was key, and if your eyes moved in the slightest, you lost 10 points and had to start all over. The phone rang, and Franklin immediately jumped from his chair. Lyra didn't as much as flinch. Franklin shook his head at her and answered the phone. It was William. "How's that pogo stick game working out?" Franklin asked. "I beat it yesterday," said William. "Bought the sequel. What's it like?" "Same as the first one, but take out the pogo stick and replace it with a flamingo." "I can't begin to picture that." "Anyway, that's not why I'm calling. You've got to come back to work." "I quit." "You have to unquit. Dr. Groffman, the guy who took your place?" There was a long pause. "Yeah? He kinda killed off half your patients." "What?" "He's got this weird philosophy. No matter what his patient's going through, the answer is always suicide." Franklin couldn't believe what he was hearing. How did this guy get hired in the first place? After all, Vlachtermat had a strict policy about new hires. They always had to go through Gordon, the mind probe, who could immediately tell if someone's intentions were less than honest. Surely this new guy would have been filtered out. "How did you find out about it?" Franklin asked. "One of his patients ratted him out to me, right before he went and offed himself. Apparently Groffman is very persuasive." Franklin couldn't imagine how their boss, Dr. Kaslam, could possibly be buying Groffman's story. "What's Kaslam doing about it?" he asked. "Nothing. I think Groffman must have some kind of persuasion powers." Vlachtermat was an equal opportunity employer. They couldn't refuse to hire someone for having superpowers. A new hire had to sign something saying he wouldn't use his powers against anyone, but if Groffman had powers, he might have persuaded Kaslam not to make him sign it. "Luckily I haven't run into Groffman, or I wouldn't be making this phone call," William said. "Meet me at Croxon Club tomorrow night at 7, said Franklin. "Don't do anything. I'll have a plan by the time I see you." "He might kill someone else before then." "Try to make sure he doesn't. I need time to do some research. Besides, I can't get off work for this. They would never understand." "Franklin, you are coming back, right?" "I'll help you get rid of this guy. That's all I can promise." Franklin hung up the phone and looked at his wife. She was still staring at the wall. "Did you hear all that?" he asked. "Suicide bad, evil persuasive doctor, got it. Now please, I'm trying to concentrate." Franklin went to bed. This had been a weird day, even for him. It was 6 o'clock the next afternoon. Franklin was finished with his last appointment and was locking up his office. He was due to meet William in an hour, but he wasn't thinking about Dr. Groffman despite the fact that Groffman was killing off his old patients. As he headed down the hallway toward the parking garage, all he could think about was Helena Kathryn. He had met another of her personalities that day, Crystal. She was an absolute genius. She had extensive knowledge of math, science, and history. She spoke of ancient Rome and string theory and computers, and she even knew precise equations that could be used to open doorways to specific dimensions. She seemed to know a lot of things Helena didn't. Why had these personalities manifested themselves? It would take a long time to get to the bottom of it, but he didn't want to rush her and risk further psychological injury. She was living proof that anything was possible. Franklin was afraid he might say something to her that would trigger further amnesia, or force one of her personalities to come out, like the apparently homicidal Sandra, or even cause her to develop an 8th personality. He knew all of that was unlikely, but he couldn't begin to explain what might have happened to Helena. He had never come across anything like it, even at Vlachtermat. Franklin's thoughts were interrupted by a strange mechanical buzz coming from inside the walls around him. He put his ear to one of the walls, and he could hear the sound more clearly. It grew louder and louder. In a moment, it grew so loud that the wall began to vibrate. Franklin took a step backward. It could be the electric company, he thought. Though most people weren't aware of it, the electric company was run by a clan of greedy and rather nasty creatures from the Pliscott dimension. When people failed to pay their bills, the Pliscott's penalties involved more than simply turning off the power. The whirring sound stopped, and 4 janitors wearing light gray overalls phased right through the walls and surrounded Franklin, 2 on either side. They each raised an arm, like Nazis. "Good evening," said Franklin. All 4 upraised arms transformed into large, red-glowing energy weapons. "I must regretfully inform you," one of them said, "that we have come to destroy you. We hope your last day has been pleasant and rewarding, and we can assure you that your death is necessary and is in no way meaningless whatsoever." They definitely weren't from the electric company. Franklin folded his arms. These were HR 120s. "If this is about Virginia Stanley, you could have come after me before now." "This has nothing to do with that incident," said the same HR 120. "But now that you mention it," said one of the others, "that was very rude of you." Franklin quickly leapt under one of the robot's legs and slid across the tile floor. One of the HR 120s fired, missed, and blew apart the legs of the HR 120 Franklin had just slid under. It collapsed to the floor and started firing at him. Soon, all 4 of them were firing at him. He had managed to get to his feet and take off down the hallway. He dodged several thin blue blasts of energy, but a couple of doors and parts of the wall vaporized. He knew he couldn't outrun 4 HR 120s on foot. His only chance was to get to his car and hope he could start it, back it out of its spot, and either get it out of the parking lot before they could catch him, or run them all down before they blew up his vehicle. It was a horrible plan. It would never work. It took him a while to realize that they had stopped firing. When he heard the crunching of metal and the sound of sparks flying behind him, he stopped running. He turned around to find 3 of the HR 120s lying in a jumbled mess on the floor. Helena Kathryn was holding the legless HR 120's flaming head by one hand, smoldering wires dangling beneath it. "How did I do that?" she asked, which might have been Franklin's first question had he not been astounded to find himself still alive.